Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, here to look ahead to the semi-finals of the Champions League. We haven't been here for a couple of weeks. Fortunately, not much has happened in the world of European football, so we've been focused on the ties at hand. Joining me to take a look, as ever, at the premier club competition in Europe, Ian Broadrick and Mark O'Hare. Hi, guys. Welcome along. Looking forward to looking ahead to two big Champions League semi-finals. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you about a sign-up offer that we have at Matchbook. It's for new customers only. You need to be over the age of 18, but if you are, and if you don't have a Matchbook account, sign up and you get 0% commission on all sports for the first 30 days. It's a fantastic offer. We've kept it going. So there we go. Open to new customers only. And of course, you have to be over the age of 18. And it goes without saying, please gamble responsibly. This is supposed to be fun. Guys, welcome along. We're going to look at the outrights before we get into the two games and see who is the favourite of the four sides that are left in the competition. And it's clearly Manchester City, who are available at 2.46, Paris Saint-Germain 4.25, 13 times winners Real Madrid are available at 5.0, and Chelsea are the outsiders at 5.6. Brothers, I know you're desperate to talk about the outrights. You've been crunching the numbers and you come up with an interesting calculation for the outright market.
Oh, I'm not sure that we call it interesting necessarily, but it's worth running through what the outright markets mean at this stage of the competition and what you're backing if you're having a bet on this market. So, essentially what you're doing is you're betting one of these teams to qualify from the semi-final, and then you're betting them to win the final. So you're essentially having a double on those two bets. And then you have to ask yourself what price is good or not in relation to that. So I've been taking them in order. You've got Man City, who are around about 1.5 to qualify against PSG. And then the price would imply that they're around about 1.5 to 1.6 to win the final. So that doesn't scream value when you're looking at it in that context. PSG, they are 2.6 to qualify for the final or thereabouts. And then you'd be getting them at about 1.9 to win the final, which, again, I guess one of Chelsea and Real is not, again, saying, yes, back me, please. Real possibly, what was interesting about the Real and Chelsea qualification odds is I have it as a very much sort of pick 'em type game. I know you probably don't, Phil, but I would probably have it as a sort of each of two. And the market's around 1.8 for Real Madrid to qualify and Chelsea are around 2, which I probably would have it closer. And then you're getting around about, depending on who qualifies, somewhere between 2.5 and 2.75 on one of them in the final. So the question really, I'd say, is of the four available to bet, the only ones that I think represent any kind of value for anyone would be Real Madrid or Chelsea. And then depending on your viewpoint as to who you think is going to qualify from that, then I think you back accordingly. But I don't think at this stage the market is very well formed. The teams are very well known to the market. If you put my gun to the head, I'd say probably Chelsea represent the most value at the moment because
full disclosure, Brothers is a massive Chelsea fan.
But as a Chelsea fan, just to be clear, that's the last thing I want to do is be putting up my own team because I think I don't want to bog them. But I think in terms of the odds available, if you look at the likelihood is that Man City, according to the market, will get to the final. If Chelsea get through past Real Madrid, getting around 2.75 on them to beat a Man City team they've beaten 2 of the last 3 times they've played, I think represents more than okay value. I think that's fine. I think they would still be shorter than that if they were to play PSG. So I think, at the odds, I would look at Chelsea, but I wouldn't hate Real Madrid. I just think Real Madrid is slightly too short to qualify from the semi-final.
Obviously, you back PSG anti-post. Have you laid them yet?
No, not going to either.
All right. Fair enough.
I just,
I know. We are live, by the way, on all social media platforms that Matchbook have accounts on. So we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube as well. If you want to get involved in the show and send us your comments, please do. Gerard Fullerton says, good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Gerard. Welcome to the programme. Peter's Punts says, Chelsea's odds should be significantly longer. They don't even flatter to deceive. And I'm a Chelsea fan. Well, Peter, you heard the logic there. You heard the logic there from Brothers. It was pretty sound logic. Mark, your thoughts on the outrights?
I think Broadrick did a superb job really in rounding things up there, and I kind of agree with everything he said. To be honest, I think City are fair favourites. We can understand why they are at the top of the market. Would I want to back them at that price? Absolutely not. So I think when we get to this stage of the competition, occasionally or quite often actually, there's normally one outsider in the four, whereas this time around you could conceivably see all four potentially going on and winning it, which does make it tough. It does make the market quite efficient too. So, yeah, I agree. I think Chelsea are the biggest price do appeal to me more. You look at the track record that they've achieved under Thomas Tuchel since he arrived, I think the end of January, the amount of teams that they've beaten, and not just the teams, the coaches in charge of those teams as well, is really, really impressive. So, yeah, I mean, the market has Madrid as slight favourites to qualify. You might disagree, Phil, but I make it as Brothers does in each of two, really. So, in that regard, I think Chelsea are the only ones offering any sort of value, but in truth, I'm not really punting this market at all right now. It's all about the individual games because it is just on a knife edge the whole way through.
I do slightly disagree, but we'll get to Real Madrid-Chelsea in just a moment. We're going to kick off with those individual games. PSG against Manchester City.
Don't make me bring out Stanford. Don't make me bring it out.
For God's sake.
I was worried you were going to do that. Okay, well, there we go. He's pinned his colours to the mast, or to the line, as it were. And there we go. We'll get to Chelsea against Real Madrid in just a moment. Obviously, I'm based in Madrid, so I'll give a more Iberian perspective on the game, I think. But before we get to that, let's talk about PSG against Manchester City. PSG favourites to win on the night at 3.22. No, sorry, outsiders to win on the night at 3.22. You can get City at 2.21. Pretty clear favourites to win in the French capital. You can get the draw at 3.82. On the handicaps, PSG with a quarter goal start at 1.99, City at minus a quarter goal at 1.90, and the goal line is set at 2.75, overs 1.89, unders is 1.99. Mark, we'll go to you first on this one. The goal line looks about right. It looks to offer potential value. This should be open. There should be goals in this, shouldn't there?
Yeah, you'd hope so. Certainly how the quarterfinals went with PSG in particular. But just on Man City, you know, I thought Dortmund were ideal opponents for them in the quarterfinals. You know, with their weaknesses, their soft underbelly, etc. But you know, I thought they put up a really good fight over two legs against City, and were just let down by some slack defending and quite sloppy play, which is very Dortmund if you look at their season as a whole. But the goals that they did concede to City, well, Emre Can was at fault for a couple of them. Just slack defending, a stupid penalty given away as well, some poor goalkeeping as well. So very fine margins went in City's favour. So I wasn't overly sort of flattered by their performance at all. I didn't think they were overly dominant, and I think it's certainly in recent weeks in the Premier League, not so much in the League Cup final on Sunday. I don't think they've convinced quite as much as they probably have done through the winter either. So yeah, I mean, I've had a sense that certainly they're giving up a few more opportunities defensively. We know John Stones will come back into the team now after being suspended on Sunday, which should help. But even still, I still have an issue with them about their sort of ruthlessness as well. I just wonder whether they do lack a focal point at times. You know, it's great having De Bruyne and Foden and Mahrez and Sterling and Bernardo, all these wonderful players with skill, intelligence and movement. But at times, I just think they are lacking that focal point in attack. And, you know, I think the big positive from a City perspective was they weren't at their best during those Dortmund games, but they didn't panic. They were pretty calm, pretty composed, trust the process, and they got through. You know, we've seen in previous years when that hasn't been the case. So a big bonus there for them. But then you look at PSG, and I know that people can look at the stats in the Bayern game and say they probably didn't deserve to qualify, and if Lewandowski's fit, they don't qualify. I think that's a bit simplistic. I think Pochettino deserves a lot of credit for seeing where Bayern's weaknesses are and exposing them. They've got the tools to certainly do that with Neymar and Mbappe, for sure. Expose that high line, play the diagonal balls over the defence. It worked really well. And yeah, sure, they gave up loads and loads of opportunities, but of course they are against Bayern. And of course they are when they're not going to have the same amount of possessions either. So, you know, I did think they were second best in terms of pattern of play, but I thought they outsmarted outsmarted Bayern, particularly in that first leg. And even in the second leg, Neymar hits the woodwork, Neuer's called into action as well. They did have their opportunities. So, yeah, like City as well, I think that victory will be a massive psychological boost for them, considering what they've probably... Well, it was just a mature performance over 2 legs, I felt, and they should be stronger for it as well, with Marquinhos back fit and available. He might not start, but he's available. They've got no major injury issues either. So I like what they're doing. I like what Pochettino's doing, is sort of pushing Verratti a little bit further forward, really trying to expose those high lines, and they will get that opportunity against City. It'd be foolish not to sort of unleash Neymar and Mbappe in a similar sort of vein. So it depends how City set up here, because I don't think they're going to change their game plan too much to suit PSG. But, you can tell Pep Guardiola is going to be very, very concerned about that. But, everything here to me screams goals. We're hoping for a game or a tie like we saw against Bayern Munich as well. I think PSG are reasonably suited now to contain and counter with that sort of pragmatic midfield as well. So I think they'll be happy to sit in, wait and see what Man City are going to do. They'll monopolise possession. I'm just not sure they've got the ability to sort of carve open and fashion loads of really clear-cut opportunities. But hopefully we'll get to see a first-half goal, because if we do get that first-half goal, it should be a rip-roaring tie. And therefore, I think over 2 3/4 is probably the way to play it, at just shy of 1.9. But yeah, I did find this quite difficult, because when we get to this stage of the competition, the markets are so efficient. It's very, very difficult to find any sort of real screaming value angle. But, I think it's hard to dismiss goals in this one.
Regular listeners and viewers of the program will know that I live in Spain. I work on Spanish football. That is my area. So I don't necessarily watch as much English football as I used to when I lived in England. I am a Spurs fan, and I did watch the Carabao Cup final for my sins. I was staggered just how much better Manchester City were than Spurs. Spurs obviously aren't PSG, but I hadn't watched much of Man City this season. They looked absolutely fantastic and just a completely different class to Spurs, who, as I say, aren't PSG. But if I was a City fan, I'd be pretty confident going into this game. You're not quite a PSG fan, brothers, but you are a bit of a PSG fanboy. You have backed them outright as well every year since the inception of the Champions League. Are you feeling confident or backing PSG, or will you be going for goals as well?
Just to be clear, I don't think I've backed them every year since they've been in the Champions League.
I'm being silly.
I think, Mark's made a lot of good points, and a lot of the points I'd make. I mean, obviously, there is a slight doubt about Mbappe. He limped out of the game at the weekend against Metz with a possible sort of
fine. He's fine.
Yeah, obviously, I would imagine that was precautionary. So, I think we assume that he's playing. Verratti got through 90 minutes, which is really important. I mean, we've talked before about how vital he is for that PSG midfield, and he provides a link between defence and attack, which can sometimes be missing. And I think his energy and his industry in midfield is enormous for them in terms of this match. I would expect to see Marquinhos play, to be honest with you. I think, I'm not sure Pochettino will be wild about playing Kehrer at centre half against Man City. So I think Marquinhos will play. But again, we'll see. I think Mark's made a lot of good points. Manchester City, one of the things that you can say about them is that they just don't convert the possession they have into quality chances. And they are definitely missing a central striker. I mean, it terrifies me, the thought that they'd get Erling Haaland, for example. So I think he would run absolute riot in this City team. I mean, the chances they create, he'll score 50 goals in a season. And with PSG, they're not great at the back. If you ignore the Coupe de France games where they play sort of weakened sides and what have you, they've not kept a clean sheet in 9. So Man City, there's a very strong chance that Man City are going to score in this game. But again, all the points Mark's made, I really like the PSG attack with Neymar, Mbappe, Di Maria, Verratti playing further forward at times. They're all, Icardi's been running into a bit of form recently. These are all players who have got more than enough to trouble a Man City defence, which itself hasn't been playing great. I mean, up until playing Spurs, which they hadn't kept a clean sheet in their previous 5 games. So this game, I think the best and most safe way to play it is to look at goals. I do like PSG getting a quarter goal start as well. I think, looking back on the last 2 rounds, that they're not going to be afraid of Man City. They've beaten Barcelona, they've beaten Bayern, and they beat them by outscoring them. So Pochettino will know he can't get past Manchester City using his defence. He's not daft. So I'm fully expecting a very strong, committed, forward game plan from PSG. And I like their chances of getting something from this game. I really do. And I think, you could take the quarter goal starter around even money. I think is a very fair bet. Especially given that Man City may even be happy with a draw. And one final point I would make just in relation to all this is also, Pep Guardiola. We've talked about him in the past about one of the reasons that Man City have failed in the latter stages of this competition is because he's tried to sort of out-clever himself and try and look at ways that he can do things different tactically. And it wouldn't surprise me that suddenly we see that Kevin De Bruyne doesn't play in this game because he played in the Carabao Cup final, and they might end up not playing their best player because he's decided to do some sort of tactical switch to try and protect against counterattacks and what have you. So I think that there is a danger for Man City that Pep gets a bit too clever for his own good again. And for me, goals is the way to go. And if you like it, take the PSG with the handicap.
Okay, there we go. The first semi-final we talked about, goals look like an obvious selection. The second semi-final we're going to talk about looks the complete opposite. Let's talk about Real Madrid against Chelsea on Tuesday night at the Estadio Alfredo Di Stefano. Remember, it's not being played at the Bernabeu. Real Madrid haven't played at the Bernabeu since the start of the pandemic. You can get Zinedine Zidane's side at 2.4 to win on the evening. Chelsea at 3.36. The draw, which potentially could suit both sides, at 3.3. On the handicaps, you can get Real Madrid at 2.01 with a minus quarter goal. Chelsea with a plus quarter goal start at 1.88. The goal line is pretty fairly 2.25. You can get overs at 2.06, unders at 1.85. I said this semi-final screams unders like the other one screams overs. If you look at the defensive record of both sides, I think Real Madrid have kept 4 consecutive clean sheets. Coming into this game, Chelsea's defensive record has been tremendous, and particularly in the Champions League as well. Brothers, unders in this game, pretty simple, pretty straightforward.
Yes, I think so. You look at both teams. Neither one of them is going to want an open game here. I think Tuchel at his time at Chelsea has had 16 clean sheets in 21 games. As long as they're not playing West Brom, I think Chelsea will be okay. Looking at the way that Real Madrid have played as well, credit where credit's due. I mean, I was very concerned about their defence in recent times without Ramos. They had other players out like Carvajal and Varane out at various times, but I thought Eder Militao especially was absolutely outstanding in that 2 legs against Liverpool. He blocked everything, he won everything in the air. He was just immense at the back, and Real Madrid have kept 4 clean sheets in a row now. And the highest praise you could give them is they don't look like they've missed Ramos at all, which is surprising to say the least. So I think Chelsea don't come across as a team that's going to score very many goals. We've seen that in the way they play. Chelsea are another team that desperately need a top quality centre forward. They've got a lot of pace, but Werner scored at the weekend, but has been disappointing with his finishing generally. Havertz is still trying to decide what position he needs to play. Pulisic has got a lot of energy and a lot of industry, but again, the end product isn't great. So, looking at Chelsea's attack, there's a lot of pace there that could unsettle the Real Madrid defence in some ways, but you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be scoring, even, I think if they scored 1, they'd be delighted in this game. For Chelsea, this game is all about keeping things tight and trying to repeat what they did against Atletico. It's interesting, obviously, that Atletico tie was played in neutral venues, and this time around, Real Madrid are getting to play, all right, not at the Bernabeu, but at least they're at home. And the second leg will be in London. I think
the pitch is exactly the same size, by the way, as the Bernabeu, exactly the same dimension. So even though it's a training ground, according to Klopp, it's exactly the same size. Yeah,
I think Klopp may have been speaking from a slightly sort of disappointed viewpoint of the way things panned out. But it was interesting, you look at the second leg in that Real Madrid-Liverpool game, and Real Madrid were absolutely fabulous defensively. They were super solid. They controlled the game. They didn't let Liverpool really have a sniff. Aside from one early
that
chance.
Salah chance, and if he scores inside 2 minutes,
yeah, which was huge. But again, then Courtois has done what Courtois has been doing for the last couple of seasons for Real Madrid, which is,
he said he's in his best form of his life, Courtois, the other week.
Yeah, I mean, again, as a Chelsea fan, it's disappointing in many ways to see him playing so well. But he's a sensational goalkeeper, and he's if you get through the Real Madrid backline, it's the form he's in. It's far from certain you're going to get a chance. You're going to score. So, looking at it, I think Real Madrid have struggled at times in this competition to break down well-organised defences. You look at what happened in the first Atalanta game when Atalanta went down to 10 men, went to a very sort of defensive formation, and it took a very late and long-range goal from Mendy to break the deadlock there. And I didn't think Real Madrid created a ton of chances, albeit, and I'm sure you're going to point out, Phil, that they were missing a number of players for that game, which they were, obviously. But
loads, yeah.
Yeah, of course. But I think, this game has all... I mean, to be honest with you, I'll have a look at the odds on a 0-0. It looks to me as though it might be settled by a goal either way. I think this is going to be an incredibly tight game between two really good defensive sides and two very strong sides. It'll be interesting to see what happens in midfield, because obviously Cruz is carrying a tiny knock, but again, I'm sure he'll be fine. But Cruz
should be fine.
Yeah. Whether or not Chelsea drop another player into central midfield to match up against the three there, I'm not sure. Again, tactically, that's something that will be interesting, because Kante and Jorginho might get overrun if they're trying to play 3v2 in the middle there. So you might see someone like Mason Mount dropping a bit deeper. But this game is probably priced correctly in many ways. I think we touched on it earlier. I think Chelsea in the qualifying market are probably a touch too big, but there's nothing that's screaming value other than, I think I'd be amazed if this game had more than 2 goals in it, and therefore taking under 2.25, where you get half a win if there's 2 goals is the way to approach it. And I think that's a very strong bet.
Okay, we've got some weather reports from our viewers. Shane says, good morning, good sunny morning from Dublin. And Peter's Punt says it's sunny in Wicklow. Also, guys, you'll be delighted to hear that it's grey and overcast in Madrid. So it's usually very sunny here. But you guys are definitely winning. I was looking at the statistics, as you do in fantastic and excellent depth, Mark. Real Madrid have scored in the last 25 home legs of knockout ties in the Champions League. For the vast majority of those, they did have Cristiano Ronaldo. Chelsea have scored in their last 9 away games in the Champions League as well. Obviously, this does scream unders for the defensive record of both sides. Is there any chance that we could see goals at both ends and more than 2.25 goals?
There's always a chance, Phil, but I've built my case around unders here, and I think I've made a real solid case, just as Broadrick has as well. You can start with Madrid. They will be stronger defensively with the players back available. Carvajal, Nacho might have to play at the left back. Varane's obviously back fit and available. You're only really missing Mendy and Ramos now. Mendy is a big miss because Marcelo isn't really trustworthy at left back. But having Valverde
might have played in a 4-man midfield had he been available, but he's got Corona.
Yeah, so they are better in a better shape than they were at Liverpool. They're still not perfectly kind of put together, but so impressed recently by their defensive efforts, the organisation, just the line that they play as well, particularly against Liverpool, not allowing the space and the runners in behind. And as you say, you guys have talked about Courtois as well. Even at the weekend, they're against Betis, making some real vital saves, but they're just lacking something at the moment going forward, in my eyes. Not scoring freely. I know they did against Cadiz, but I don't think they're creating bucket loads of opportunities.
They're tired, Mark. They're tired.
I was getting there. It's. I thought at the time it was a bit of kidology from Zidane, really. Kind of, I think it was between the Clasico and the Liverpool games. He said his squad are down to the bare bones, not just in terms of fitness, but in terms of fatigue. They're running on empty, and but that definitely does seem to be the case right now, and that's a concern. I still think they've got the experience and the sort of streetwise nature to negotiate these kind of ties, but I just cannot see this game descending into anything like a sort of end-to-end tie, because Chelsea won't allow it themselves. You talk about those 16 clean sheets and 21 games under Tuchel. They've actually managed to keep out Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Spurs and Atleti twice. So they haven't conceded a goal in over 9 hours of football against real elite opposition there. So for me, it's quite hard to sort of say that they're not contenders to win this competition outright. I know they didn't cover themselves in glory in 2 legs against Porto, but that was a tricky tie. But this, for me, in Chelsea terms, is about game management. It's about control, defending by dominating the ball, and just understanding the situation and managing the pressure and just being professional. Kind of all these kind of characteristics that weren't necessarily there under Frank Lampard. So, I think this game is going to be pretty tight, attritional, low scoring. And I think, as Broadrick says, 0-0 is a big runner. These two teams will be looking to seize any sort of opportunity they can, but I just cannot see it kind of being anything like the Liverpool 2 legs that we saw, which were really quite enjoyable, apart from probably the last hour in the second leg at Anfield. So, under 2.25 goals at around 187, 185. I think that's absolutely fine when you're profiting if there's fewer than 2 goals.
Peter's Punts is asking us, what's the situation with Hazard? He came off the bench at the weekend and played the last 15 minutes against Betis. Actually looked relatively sharp. He's going to be in the matchday squad. I don't think he's going to start, but I think he's going to be available from the bench. Maybe he might be available from the bench. Brothers?
On that point, I did see that he created more chances in 15 minutes than the rest of the team had done, conceding 75. So
no, he looked good. He looked good. Yeah.
He is that type of player, isn't he? I mean, when you're looking at this game, you're looking for someone to create a bit of magic, and he's. I mean, every Chelsea fan will be terrified at the thought of him coming up against us because he has that ability. Now, obviously, he's not shown it for Real really, other than sort of in fits and starts because of injuries. But he would be a player that you could see coming on in the last 20, 25 minutes, maybe even half an hour if he's got it in his legs. And he will. He must be fresh, surely. I mean, he's hardly played this season, so he would be someone who could be that X factor for Real Madrid in this tie. Much as it hurts as a Chelsea fan to say that, but I think that's all we can really expect from this game. You look at the Porto match, Chelsea were incredibly comfortable defensively. For those ties, and it took a worldy overhead kick from Taremi to score in the last minute of injury time when they probably felt the job was done by that stage. So I think for me, you're very unlikely to see a game where you get more than 2 moments of absolute magic. And obviously these teams have got the players who can do that, but taking unders is a very strong play, I think, in this for me. Okay,
it's good that we're all on the same page in this. Thank you very much, Shane, who says my beard is biblically cool and I look like a professional La Liga striker. Don't know about that, Shane. More like a washed-up 4th division centre-back. But thank you very much indeed. Before we go, we'll do our best bets of the week. We've only got 2 games. Go on, yeah.
Phil, just to interrupt. Sorry, Shane's just asked a question about the anti-post value and
let's do it.
Top goal scorer. I think we've touched on the anti-post stuff at the start, but I think in terms of the top goal scorer market, that's interesting because you've got Haaland on 10, and then you've got Mbappe on 8, and then probably Neymar on 6 would be the main 3 runners. I think getting Haaland at around 1.8 is a perfectly decent bet in that market, if I'm honest. But I think everyone, ultimately you're deciding whether or not Neymar and Mbappe will have much success against Man City and then potentially have another game in the final. So that's the way to approach that. But at the odds on offer, I don't think Mbappe is a great deal of value. And I can't see Neymar scoring, 4+ over 2 games. So over 3 games, potentially, sorry. So, yes, I think if you're going to back top goal scorer, I mean, I wouldn't personally do it, but I think if you had to have a bet, then backing Haaland at 1.8-ish is perfectly fair at that.
Good stuff. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for getting involved in the programme. Makes it better, I think. Let's get the best bets then. There are only 2 games. There are only 2 possible options. Mark, your best bet of the first leg of Champions League semi-finals?
Yeah, I think we're both in line here. Madrid, Chelsea, under 2.25 goals.
Okay, brothers, I think I could guess what your best bet might be, but there we go.
Yeah, obviously I'm in line with Mark on that. I think that is the outstanding bet of the 2 games that we have to choose from. I think, looking at the PSG game, the safest bet, and I think a perfectly fair bet is taking over 2.75. I think the game should have goals in it. So, yeah, that would be the way I'd take it.
There we go. Thank you very much for joining us on the Matchbook Champions League podcast. We'll be back next week to look ahead to the second legs of the semi-finals. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app and follow us across Matchbook social media. And we'll be back next week. So see you then. Bye-bye.